To say that this headline infuriates me is an understatement. Dozens of modern Orthodox rabbis call for moral clarity in the face of Gaza humanitarian crisis. This letter, signed by these 80 rabbis, or so-called rabbis, I don't know who they are exactly, or most of them I don't know who they are, is an embarrassment for the Jewish people and the whole freedom-loving world. I want to speak honestly but gently, not out of anger, but out of deep sorrow for what these list of 80 people, some of them real rabbis, have signed on to. Recently, a group of rabbis signed a letter criticizing the conduct of Israel's war in Gaza. The letter calls for more humanitarian restraint and suggests Israel is responsible for a moral failing in the war's execution. On the surface, it speaks in the language of Jewish values, compassion, justice, and dignity. But with all due respect, and with an extremely heavy heart, I have to say, this letter is a painful and dangerous mistake that can't be taken back. If they weren't so-called rabbis, my response would be much, much more forceful. This letter causes real damage, not just to Israel's image, but to the Jewish people itself, especially as we remain in the middle of a multi-front war for our survival. Let's be clear, this war is not over, not even close. Gaza is only one front. In the north, Hezbollah continues to exist as an Iranian proxy planned to infiltrate Israel and massacre more Jews in Israel. In Judea and Samaria, armed attacks on Jews are a weekly reality that Jews have to defend themselves from, then erroneously called settler violence by anti-Israel voices and media, and then parroted by rabbis like these. Globally, Jews are under siege on college campuses, in the streets, even in synagogues, and Iran is watching and preparing for its moment to attack us again. And Hamas in Gaza, still holding 50 of our hostages, torturing and starving those still alive underground in inhumane conditions in those terror tunnels. And into this painful and urgent moment, a group of rabbis, many or all of whom were raised or educated in the diaspora, Western progressive educated, issued a public letter that parrots the exact accusations used by those who seek to delegitimize and destroy Israel. They repeat phrases like collective punishment and blockaded aid without any reference to the reality of the enemy we are fighting or to the context of a war forced upon us by genocidal death cult terrorists that have to win. And this is a war that we have to win to protect 10 million Israeli citizens. Moreover, their inclusion of settler violence in their letter underscores a deeply flawed perspective, one that reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of our reality and a troubling inability to discern truth from the falsehoods promoted by the anti-Israel agenda that they as well believe. And what does that have to do with our war fighting in Gaza? But they have to throw that in there to show that, oh, Israel's just as bad. It reflects a mindset deeply shaped by galut, exile thinking, a psychological residue of Jewish life in the diaspora, a life where we survived by keeping our heads down low, by appeasing those around us, by proving over and over how moral we were, often at the cost of our own ability to defend ourselves. That thinking might have helped us survive thousands of years in exile, but today, that's dangerous. When we are defending Jewish sovereignty in the ancestral homeland of Israel as the front line for Jews worldwide and the whole freedom-loving world against a 1,400 plus year Islamic jihadi agenda against all of us. But it goes deeper. These rabbis speak of justice and ethics, yet completely ignore the origins of this conflict. They ignore the fact that we experienced an October 7th massacre in Hebron in 1929, when the term Palestinians referred to the Jews living here. They ignore that the Palestinian national identity itself was then manufactured in the 1960s by the Soviet Union and the KGB, further weaponizing Islamic Jihad as a political weapon to undermine Israel's legitimacy and cloak terrorism in the language of liberation. It was never about building a nation. It was always about destroying ours and killing Jews. And this is what they're taking their ethics against ourselves and defending ourselves. They ignore how this conflict is not just political, it's ideological, it's religious, it's about murdering every single Jew, including mothers, grandmothers, and babies. Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Islamic Republic of Iran are all part of this 1,400 plus year religious movement, rooted in conquest and domination. They see Israel as an outpost to be removed, not because of settlements in Judea and Samaria or our borders, but because of what we are, a sovereign Jewish state in the heart of the Middle East, where we belong. And we see the consequences of this every day. At anti-Israel protests in the West, people chant, Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yehud. That chant is a chilling reference to the massacre of Jews in the 7th century by Muhammad's Islamic army in Khaybar, which is a village now located in Saudi Arabia. That happened thousands of years ago. This is not about justice. This is not about human rights. This is about celebrating Jewish bloodshed. And too many Jews, including these rabbis, turn a blind eye. They prefer to virtue signal to their own communities, showing, oh yes, we care about the Gazans too, and yes, Israel might be doing something bad, and we have to speak out about it, instead of standing up for the Jewish people and their own homeland. Yet these rabbis in their letters say nothing of all this, nothing of the enemy's goals, nothing of their ideological war where they are total evil day in and day out, using their own people as civilian shields, nothing of Egypt's responsibility in forcing Gazans to remain in Gaza instead of abiding by international asylum law to allow them to escape a dangerous war zone, forcing Israel to act as no other in a war, and providing aid to an enemy population that no other country in the world has ever done in a war. No mention of any of that. They speak as though this is merely another conflict in the world, where two sides are just equals, revealing their personal discomfort with confronting Jewish power, acting to protect global Jewry, including their lives, in a moral complex reality made harder with deadly libelous media campaigns that they are taking part in and spreading. As if both sides just need to be more careful. As if this is just a time for more balance. And be ethical in how you fight them, as if we're not being ethical. But this isn't about balance. This is blindness and dangerous. They ignore the reality of this war and who we're fighting against and who started this war and how they're fighting this war. They ignore what our enemies say in Arabic and Persian and on the streets of Europe and America about massacring all of us and celebrating and being happy about doing that. And they ignore the devastating consequences that their letter has, not just morally, but practically. Because when spiritual leaders issue public rebukes of Israel and the Jewish people in the middle of a war, they embolden the very people trying to destroy us. They say, hey, look, the Jewish spiritual leaders are calling out Israel instead of calling us out. Great, let's pile on some more lies so we can kill them some more and get away with it. They validate the lies being told about us. They embolden our enemies, and they demoralize our own people, soldiers, survivors, and families of hostages who so desperately need strength, not sermons, all in the name of ethics and morals. Some of the signatories have said, if you're hurt by the letter, it wasn't meant for you. But that's not how it works. When you speak in the name of Torah, in the name of Bible, and Jewish morality, every Jew is your audience. The whole world is your audience. And when your words bring confusion, division, grief, and more danger to your own people, it's not divisive to push back against it. It's a moral responsibility calling you out for being divisive and dangerous. And once again, I write this with deep sorrow because I know that these rabbis think they're being sincere, while very wrong and doing tremendous damage and a true desecration of God's name. But sincerity is not enough when the result of your words weakens and endangers your own people, especially at our most vulnerable hour. We need leaders, especially spiritual leaders, who understand that compassion begins with our own nation. We need leaders, especially spiritual leaders, who see through the fog of propaganda and remember the real roots of this conflict and how they're fighting against us. We need leaders and spiritual leaders who speak from strength, not from guilt, from truth, not from fear. from a redemption outlook, not from an exile outlook. We are still in the fire. The war is not over. Now is the time that we need clarity and courage, and for a return to leadership, especially spiritual leadership, that does not speak from exile thinking, but from Torah thinking, not the exile mentality. May we all merit the strength to stand with our people unapologetically and to rise above the confusion of our times with truth, unity, and unshakable love for the Jewish people and the Jewish state of Israel, understanding that good is good and evil is evil, not the moral confusion that good is evil and evil is good. How disappointing that instead of using their rabbinic voices to strengthen the Jewish people all over the world and the freedom-loving world in this multi-front war, they preferred legitimizing the uncomfortable feelings of Jews who are uncomfortable with Jews in Israel using our power to do what we have to do to stop a barbaric enemy to make sure an October 7th massacre never happens again from Gaza. We will overcome this internal weakness as well. And now I want to juxtapose the extreme harm of these rabbis with this update about two more miracles that just take place in the Holy Land of Israel in Judea and Samaria. Last week, a Jewish shepherd in Judea was ambushed by an Islamo-Nazi terrorist hiding behind a bush. The terrorist jumped on his vehicle, fired multiple shots, and when the gun jammed, physically attacked the shepherd instead to kill him. Only by a miracle and sheer courage, the shepherd managed to fight him off with his bare hands. Hours later, another 10 Islamo-Nazi terrorists from the village of Al-Minya stoned and beat another Jewish shepherd near the Jewish town of Ma'ale Amos in the Judean desert, and they beat him with clubs. Again, by the grace of God, only had light injuries and survived the attack. These are incidents that are then reported by anti-Israel organizations in the media as settler violence, when all they're doing is defending themselves. Where is a letter about these attacks from these 80 rabbis who condemn their fellow Jews in Israel for settler violence and daring to defend themselves in a war for survival? Where is their outrage over daily Arab-Muslim terror against innocent Jews in Judea and Samaria, still to this day? As if the celebrations of the barbaric acts of October 7th by the whole Palestinian global community weren't proof enough of their evil barbarism to stand by their fellow Jews unconditionally. And those celebrations took place on October 7th, where their voices calling out the education by their mothers and fathers when they're in kindergarten and nursery to kill Jews. Nowhere. So sad that they would rather believe lies and slander their fellow Jews living in our ancestral homeland, standing up to defend ourselves, than confront the very real violence we face every single day and evil. They cry settler violence while our people are dodging bullets, rocks, and knives on the front line for the whole freedom-loving world. They condemn Israel for not agreeing with the way she defends itself while ignoring daily terror aimed at Jews for being Jews, not even soldiers. So sad how these 80 rabbis have literally disqualified themselves from being respected and trusted as spiritual leaders. Their silence on our barbaric enemy, ignoring the real terror we deal with on a daily basis, and they're obsessive with false narratives, makes their moral compass completely unreliable. If people won't speak up proudly for Jews fighting for our lives and against an evil enemy motivated by a 1400+ year religious jihad, they shouldn't be taken seriously when they speak about us. Thankfully, the majority of Jews in Israel have moral clarity to stand with truth, stand with courage, and stand with the Jews of Judea and Samaria without being swayed by the exile mentality of virtue signaling, a progressive, really regressive value system that systematically rips the right of Jews to protect ourselves against an evil, evil enemy. Remember that. We're going to beat our enemies. We're going to overcome our internal challenges as well within our own people. Am Yisrael Chai. If you are not yet a subscriber to our daily, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect, truthful videos about Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world, what are you waiting for? Go to pulsevisual.com and click to subscribe today. And yes, we are a donor-based operation. We need your donations for support in order to make these videos and get our videos seen and do all the work we do. So every once in a while, whether a large donation or a small donation, just go to pulsevisual.com and click on the donate button. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.